So it's been 4 years since the last Star Trek film, and it's finally out, and I'm able to talk about it with you. So the first thing I want to say is...
Intruder alert, intruder alert.
Intruder alert? Oh no. Computer, raise shields before...
Jay, you didn't think you were boldly gonna go where no man has gone before by yourself, did you?
Howdy-ho, everybody. So this is the official review for Star Trek. I'm joined by Tony here, and we're going to be talking about the movie with you guys. So we're going to be dividing the review into 3 segments. The first segment is going to be completely spoiler-free. It's just our general impressions of the movie, and maybe some minor plot points that won't really matter in you seeing the movie. The second half, we will be diving into the spoilers. However, if you don't care to hear the spoilers, then on the bottom of the screen I'll give a time to jump ahead, so you can just cut to the final review section where we give our verdicts. But so now it's time to talk about the movie. So first off, I gotta say, definitely a lot of action in the movie. Basically every cliche action scene you've seen in any summer movie is in this movie. Anything from, you know, running, chasing scenes, to gun battles, to spaceships, and all that stuff. It's all jammed into this one movie. I thought the action turned out pretty good. What do you think of it?
I agree with some of what you're saying, Jay.
All right.
I thought the movie did start off, it literally starts off running.
Good point.
And it never slows down. And I thought it was actually to the movie's detriment. Felt more like Michael Bay than J.J. Abrams. You know, one of the reasons I've liked him with some of his other projects is it seems like he really knows how to hit the human emotion, you know, depth to character and those types of things. In this movie, it was really just driven by the action. Each plot point just got you to the next action scene. And I found that took away from the movie a little bit. You know, to space, it's like, I want a little bit of quiet. You know, at least in some moments. I like that emptiness of space, and we didn't really get that.
With that point, yeah, the action scenes, it does overwhelm the movie, where in previous Star Treks it was more about character development, especially the last one. It was all about these characters growing, and this one is just an action summer movie. That's all it really is. But the few scenes that are in between the action scenes are very drama-filled, and I found it entertaining. Just when you think something, you figured out something, it just throws a completely new twist at you, and it does that until the last act of the movie. You think you know someone, and they're completely someone different, and all these characters, what you're familiar with the characters in the original Star Trek, all of them get changed in this one, and it's a really roller coaster ride, but I thought it was an enjoyable, how all the twists and turns in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, it did do a good job of keeping things interesting, but my problem with movies like this where there's so many twists and turns where you know you can never depend on anything is you never invest because you never know what's going to happen, and you kind of need that character depth where it's like, okay, this character consistently does this, but when the changes are happening all the time, at least as a viewer, I'm just not invested. So when the twist happens, it doesn't impact me as much. And that's what I felt happening a lot in this movie.
Moving on, besides that point, the new villain, because obviously he's the one that's been getting a lot of attention. Minor plot point, doesn't give away anything. Basically, there's an insider in in Starfleet, the Federation, that's basically going on a rampage and doing a one-man war against the entire Federation, and Kirk is sent out to basically take him down. So with the new villain played by Cumberbatch, what do you think of his performance? Because I thought he was awesome.
Yeah, I enjoyed his performance. I don't necessarily think he had a lot of character time on screen, so as far as, you know, developing the character, I didn't get a lot. but I thought he did a good job.
Well, with the character development and the so little of what you said, I thought that actually benefited it because it did keep him in this mystery corner box on who is this guy really and what are his intentions. And if you showed him too much, I think that would have given away that little mystery behind the character. But I will say his action scenes are really badass.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. My only issue is I felt there was a lot of inconsistencies of what skills he possessed. In one scene, he'd punch a guy and the guy would fly 50 feet, and in the other scene, he'd punch a guy and it wasn't a big deal.
Well, he was conserving himself. You know?
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't want to get tired during battle. But moving on to the rest of the cast, Spock, Kirk, Aurora, Bones, Chekhov, very different from the original reboot, I guess you have to call it now. Kirk, I thought was really good in this movie. Besides one point of he has to start all over again. It was basically like watching the first movie again. But other than that, I thought he had a great story arc of him being the selfish person to maturing. Spock, that is a topic for debate, in my opinion, with the spoiler stuff. But the actor did Spock very well, but there's some character issues that I had some dealings with. What are your thoughts on those two?
It's really those main core characters that made me fall in love with the first reboot. And again, I think they did a really good job choosing all the actors. I do agree with you. Some of the characters felt different than in the first film. Kirk, Chris Pine, I thought he was solid. I don't know what it was, but Spock to me looked a little different this time.
He did, yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I think it was the haircut. That bowl cut he has just wasn't right.
Something was different.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm glad you noticed that too. The one character that took me out of the movie a little bit was Bones. It just seemed like they took his character and made him really one-dimensional this time. Just really with those cliche one-liners.
Well, but that's what Bones was in the TV series. Maybe not in the movies, but in the TV series. That's all he did was argue in these metaphors. So
yeah, no, and I understand that. I think they've done a good job of, okay, this is what Captain Kirk was like before. This is what Spock was like before, and these new actors have embraced that. But at some point, they have more than one layer to them. And this film, and this is why I feel like they seemed a little bit different, is they took their one main characteristic, and that was the only one layer they would really show instead of developing, some smaller nuances in the characters.
okay. And then as far as the other characters, Aurora, Chekhov, and Scotty, in my opinion, they're pretty pointless in this movie. Let's see, Aurora is basically good for speaking Klingon in one scene, and the rest she's just made out to be a really whiny girlfriend. And
in a short skirt.
Yes, and it really takes her out from this. She's supposed to be this really strong, woman that they started mentioning, diving into that in the original reboot, but they just took her way out of character, I thought, in this one. And Chekhov, I don't know what they were thinking with him. It's not Chekhov because he's not even in his world anymore compared to the original. And Scotty, he got short-shipped in the original reboot movie. He didn't show up till 3/4 of the movie, and you feel it literally happens again in this movie. He's gone until like the last half of the movie. So I just don't know what they were doing with the secondary characters with that.
Well, and I think this goes back to my original point. The reason this movie suffered some, in my opinion, was the story I felt really was just trying to get from action sequence to action sequence. So when the plot doesn't allow, side stories or more character development, how do you include, less important characters?
Okay. And then, unless do you have anything else to say before? I think pretty much the heart of this movie does involve the spoilers. So is there any other general impressions you want to say before moving into that, or?
No, I think that about sums it up.
Okay. So we're done with the general impressions of the review. If you want to skip ahead to the final verdicts, the time will be at the bottom of the screen. Otherwise, if you've seen the movie already, or you just want to watch a couple of nerds talk about Star Trek really in detail, feel free to join us. So, there you go. So, okay. The big spoiler, obviously, the main villain and who he turns out to be. It's Khan. So, with Khan, I liked him. I'm so split on him. I'm 50-50. As I alluded before, I thought he was a badass character, and I loved they brought a mystery to him. And I thought it was really interesting how they actually had Kirk and Khan working with each other side by side. I mean, for a Trekkie fan, I'm like, whoa, that's kind of weird, but cool in a way. But the one drawback I have about him actually being Khan, what's the point of this alternate timeline if you're just going to repeat what the other movies did? It's just a waste for me. And that's to me, that's where the movie fell apart. It wasn't this new Star Trek, it was reimagining the old Star Trek again. And the last 30 minutes, I just wanted to scream, actually, because it is such a repeat of some previous events that happened in the original series, going from there with Khan.
Yeah, I felt, I mean, Khan's a cool character, and Wrath of Khan is obviously a beloved Star Trek movie.
Well, it soon will be a weird one-world situation.
Well, you know, I felt some Star Wars influences in this movie.
Yes, I did too.
You know, we can delve into that, but I'll stay on Khan for right now. I liked his character, but it was kind of confusing. It's like, okay, well, Captain Kirk and Khan are meeting now, but in my back Star Trek knowledge, I know they have this other history.
They did explain that, though, because Kirk originally first found Khan's ship where they were all frozen during his 5-year mission. So obviously they didn't. It was during the unexplored territory. However, Khan actually did explain this in the movie, because when Vulcan blew up in the first movie, it forced the Federation to go ahead schedule to go into these undiscovered territories. So it makes sense on. It made more sense on why Khan was in this movie than Wrath of Khan, the actual original. The reason they gave behind that is really stupid, but the reason I bought it, you know, is because the events of what happened in one, it made things go faster in this timeline. But this is kind of a funny moment. This is just a funny observation I had. There's a scene where Prime Spock meets alternate reality Spock, where they talk to each other. And it was the most ridiculous scene, I thought, because Spock goes to Spock, as weird as that sounds, and he goes, the new Spock asks old Spock, have you ever encountered Khan in your previous adventures? And Spock goes on to say, I can't, we talked about this, I can't, talk about, our time. We need to let your timeline fold in, naturally. And then literally 2 seconds after he says that, he gives the life story of Khan. I don't get the logic behind that at all.
I think it was supposed to be funny.
No one laughed at the theater. Everyone took that really seriously, and I don't think it was a joke, but
when two kids are playing hide and go seek, and an adult sees where the one kid hides, and he goes, I don't know where the kid's hiding, but he might be that way. I don't know. That's how I interpret it, just based on the inflection in his voice. But it was a kind of.
Like I said, it's just a small little thing that I found. What, you just completely reversed yourself in 2 seconds. So, but moving on to the last half an hour, because I think this is the moment. I think Trekkies will either praise it or really tear it apart. And for me, I will tear it apart. I did not like what they did. Basically, it's just the end of Wrath of Khan, but the roles are reversed. But here's the thing. When it was happening, I thought it was cool. I'm like, oh my god, they're actually doing this. This is really cool. But the problem is, they didn't have the balls to go forward with it. Whereas in Wrath of Khan, when it happened, you thought, wow, he is dead. But as soon as Kirk died, you know he's coming back to life because of that stupid tribble scene. It's like, so there's no suspense to this. There's no...
This movie, I feel like that's the main theme of this movie is lack of suspense. Because, one of my favorite things that Roger Ebert used to say is, if there's a gun in the second act, you know it's going to go off in the fourth. And that's what this movie was full of.
Yeah.
It's like, Scotty, well, with this core reactor, some little thing could make it just go wrong completely. So, 30 minutes later, when the core blows up, oh, okay, that makes sense, because they already explained it to us.
Yeah.
And the same with that tribble scene. There's no reason for a completely worthless scene like that, except for to have an excuse that Kirk can come back to life at the end. And that, if you're an experienced moviegoer, it does take away all the suspense.
It did. And then, but what was even more shocking was Spock actually, blew a fuse and became very, very, very emotional. Again, I thought it was cool because if Spock is ever going to show emotion, that would be the moment that he would show emotion. However, again, they just didn't have the balls to go through with it again. Where within his anger, if he actually went through and killed Khan, it would have been such a powerful moment. But again, you're just like, well, they're going to need him to bring him back to life, so what's the point of this last chase scene again? But
I thought it was kind of neat that they touched back on Wrath of Khan, where Spock's on one side of the glass, Kirk's on one side of the glass.
Well, I agree. Like I said, when it was happening, I'm like, oh my god, this is kind of cool. But it didn't have the balls like the original one did. And to me, what's the point of redoing it again if you're not going to make it better?
For me, I just thought it was corny when Spock throws his hand up to the glass, and then Kirk's hand's on the glass, and then they unify their V's.
Oh no, I didn't mind that. I thought you were going to go. I thought you were going to mention the fact that Spock's the one that screams Khan. I did not know how to react at that point.
The hands on the glass, the only thing I could think of was E.T. and when the boy and him lift their fingers up, and I'm like, it's just, I don't know, it seemed kind of cheap for these two grown men.
So, final impressions. Basically for me, the movie is a lot of action, but I found the action to be enjoyable. I thought it was a nice collage of different action scenes from different summer movies all rolled up into one. The only thing that took me back was, as a Trekker, they did some things really wrong, I thought, and especially in the last half an hour of the movie. I think if you know nothing about Star Trek and just want to see a summer action popcorn movie, you will love this movie. But for me, it's not as great as the original reboot, but I still liked it based on the action, and also the villain I thought was really cool. I liked how he was mysterious and how, you never knew his angle until the very end. So for me, I'm going to give it a B+. I enjoyed it, but it's not as great as I hoped it'd be.
So Jay, I know you like to do grades. When I review a movie, I always work on a 10-point scale.
Okay.
So, the first reboot, I would have given a 9. I thought it was, nearly perfect.
Oh, well, for me, just so we can clarify, the original movie, I would have given an A+. You would give it an A in my terms.
I guess an A.
So for me, a 10 on the original reboot.
This, In Darkness, I'm feeling a 6. I'm feeling a 6. To me, that's your, average movie that hasn't really done anything to distinguish itself. And I don't think this movie has. It just moves you from one action scene to the other. There's not a lot of story. There's not a lot of character development. There's, in horror movies, you have the jump scare.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, that's what cheap horror movies do. this movie had a lot of jump suspense. You know, you already have them. Can we do any spoilers here? No spoilers?
No spoilers.
No spoilers. But you have a scene developing. You don't need, someone jumping out the side. You don't need one more mess to make it even messier.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what this movie does consistently. I think it's cheap. I think it's cliche. The one thing that made this movie somewhat enjoyable is that I think it's well casted, which it already was from the previous review.
Yeah. Cool, so there you have it. So I think there's, even though we have different opinions about the movie, I think there's one thing we can agree on. It's a very different Star Trek movie. I think that's what it's going to come down to. So people, like me, might accept the change and go with it. And, I think some people will obviously be really taken back by it. But
if you're going to see it because you enjoyed the first one, I think you're going to be very disappointed. If you're going into it because you just want to see some buildings blown up, Michael Bay style, then
I want to go as far as Michael Bay, but yeah, like I said, it is very action.
Then you might be satisfied.
All right, sounds good. Well, that concludes the review. I hope you guys enjoyed it. So see you next time. Take care.